Hi, Shalom, Iran. I'm going to continue speaking about great rabbis of yesteryear now. I wanted to speak today something close to my heart, a relative of mine, Rabbi Musa Zargari, Zechet Tzadik Libracha, famous Persian rabbi of his time. And at the moment we are speaking about various different great Persian Chachamim of yesteryear. At the moment we're devoting a lot of time this couple of weeks in of itself. Rabbi Musa Zargari was a very, very great rabbi. He was also known as Adon Zargari. He was one of, let's say, the great religious figures among Iranian Jews, let's see, as described over, relentlessly and passionately dedicated himself to teaching Torah, Hebrew, and let's say really doing huge amounts of kiruv outreach work and raising kids of the Jewish community in Iran. And we've spoken about various relatives of mine also that was connected to them, great Rabbanim. Especially I'd recommend everyone to watch over the video we recorded about Rabbi Hezkiah Zerubbabeli, who was a principal in Iran of a previous point in time, who would actually become a great rabbi also in Gilo in Jerusalem, and we will speak about him towards the end of the presentation in due course in the south. So Rabbi Musa Zargari, I believe, was born in the year 1923. I believe that was a Hebrew year of 5684 in the Hebrew calendar, and obviously it was a very religious family in Kerman. Now we spoke about in the video we did of Rabbi Chacham Hezkiah Zechet Tzadik Libracha, a bit about the history with regards to Kermani Jewish history in of itself. And it's actually interesting, Rabbi Musa Zargari's father was also Rabbi Hezkiah, if I'm not mistaken. He happened to have been a famous rabbi in Kerman at that point in time, and the family was not that wealthy in of itself, like many other people I believe in Kerman, but Rabbi Hezkiah was very much determined to raise his children in a great Torah fashion and teach them religious studies throughout, and a great, let's just say, Torah education itself. Now it's interesting that Rabbi Hezkiah would send his son Rabbi Musa to a traditional school at that point in time when he was 5 to let's say learn more of the earlier informations with regards to Jewish faith and Munah in of itself. And I think it was a period of time, if I'm not mistaken. This was it's actually using the material from the 7 Dorim website for this video in of itself, much of the information. I think at this point in time it was a period when schools and educational facilities were more scarce among Iran. There wasn't that many educational options, and in some regions there was no options, I believe, at that stage in time, definitely in the Jewish sphere in of itself. Come what's in the 1930s, I think it was during the period of the Reza Pahlavi's, let's say, ministership. Later he was known as the Reza Shah. The Persian education would become mandatory at that point in time, and it was at this specific time that Rabbi Musa Zargari would start primary school at the age of 12 years old, it's reported over. And I think sadly around that window of time his mother passed away, and that would obviously leave a huge impact, very deep impact on him at that point in time, very sad impact, and he had to cope obviously with the absence of his mother. And let's say this would lead to him, having to leave school at one point in time. But I think he was encouraged by his relatives and friends. He would return to school a short period later and would start working once his primary education was finished. He would be, I think, reported over as a part-time thing, obviously learning Torah much of the day as a secretary at a small firm, and later as an apprentice. His brother had a fabric store, so he'd be an apprentice over there. And then I think it was the year 1944. That one time, Rabbi Zargari, or he would conscript to the army and serve in the army's hospital. I think many people in Iran would do that at that stage in time. Now, Rabbi Musa would spend this extra time, obviously, teaching Torah, Hebrew for free, reported over. And I think this was at that point in time, it was a school called the Jinj Danish School in Kerman, which was founded by Utzah HaTorah. Remember spoken about Utzah HaTorah, how it will form in the year 1946, I believe, in Iran, if I'm not mistaken, or around that window of time, by great rabbis. We did speak about the philanthropists that would actually start up and open that school, excellent school network in of itself. And he was employed as a teacher and worked there for 2 years after finishing military service. So immediately after military service, he's really got like let's say, a backbone within regards to education in of itself. Now, I think come the year 1949, Rabbi Musa would get married to Rabbi Devorah from the Zerubbabeli family. So that's how the connection is over there. That would result in 6 boys, all of whom would follow their father in great Jewish leadership and flourishing in himself. And we're going to speak about some of the great rabbis from the Zargari family in himself. Rabbi Zargari, who we're going to speak about in due course, is currently the headmaster of the Torah Chaim of Los Angeles and the synagogue also. Rabbi Yosef Zagari, he teaches and manages B'nai Torah Institute. I don't know if it's still that, or he does many other great Torah works in of itself. And I think Rabbi Musa Zargari, 3 months after he got married, would migrate to Tehran along with his wife, and I think they'll be there at a temporary point in time. And then I think they would actually end up spending a long time in Tehran, if I'm not mistaken. In Tehran, Rabbi Zargari was employed as a religious teacher in the Otzah HaTorah school network over there. That was managed, I believe, remember the Otzah HaTorah, we spoke about Rabbi Isaac Meir Levi, if I'm not mistaken, he was from Poland, from Europe. He would actually manage at that point in time. He would teach in Jewish schools between the years 1950 to 1973, including the Ganjei Danash school over there, which was a Tarash intersection branch, I think, connected to Otzah Torah. The Ganjei Danish, another one of the schools, if I'm not mistaken, Fachar Abad branch, if I'm not mistaken. And if I'm not mistaken, it could be he also taught in an Alliance connected school also, an art school also in Iran, and a joint American classes connected to America in itself. He would teach young Jews, so he was really spreading his wings all over there. And during a period of 10 years, he was responsible, it's reported over here from the Seven Dorian website, for supervising summer camps for young children and teenagers also. Now, Adon Zargari, Harab Zargari, would use any opportunity to elevate his knowledge and his great, let's just say, Torah knowledge in himself. He would participate in various different educational seminars and in Iran, and even go abroad within regards to this, along with various other Hebrew teachers. He loved teaching. He had a passion for teaching and believed that teaching is not just a job in its own right, it's a holy endeavor in of itself, and not a job to become a wealthy man. It's something very important. One of his great qualities reported over was his sense of humor reported over. When it came to his characteristics, he displayed, let's say, a remarkable patience. He was very patient with Talmidim, with students, which is a great attribute to have, regardless of their opinion or personalities. He nurtured love for the Torah, thought, and kindness. I think come what year 1973, he became a member of the directors of board of the Cultural Assembly of the Ganjei Danish School, and he was also chosen to inspect the Jewish schools and educational centers in Tehran. It was reported over. Rav Adon Zargari is, let's just say, one of the more pioneers, let's just say, in translation when it comes to Hebrew and religious textual information. And it's actually interesting. As well as Rav Zargari, also there was a great man named Mashallah Rahman. They would co-translate all 5 books of the Torah into simple Persian, along with the Haftarot of each Parshat HaShavua, Torah portion of the Shabbat, and the Haftarah of special days in of itself. The translations were published by the Cultural Assembly of Otzah Torah back in the year 1985. Furthermore, I think he was part of a team of translators for, let's just say, Hebrew Persian and Persian Hebrew dictionaries. He would collaborate, let's say, with Professor Solomon Chaim, also in his various endeavors for 8 years. Among, let's say, valuable services were establishing Hebrew classes, let's say, for adults, and providing religious education and Torah instruction to students who studied in non-Jewish schools at that point in time and were not familiar with Torah and religious matters. He would held sessions in a famous synagogue, the Rafinia Synagogue, in the evenings, and he was later asked by the late Mullah Yosef Dilmani to manage Hebrew classes in a synagogue called the Levian Synagogue also. And I think it was in the year 1993, Harav Zargari would migrate to Jerusalem in order, let's say, to be reunited with the whole family. He would return over there to, let's say, providing social, cultural, Jewish education over there to fellow Iranian Jews, to understand Hebrew books in himself, textual information, to study them. He would teach them, he would translate into Persian, really helping at that point in time. And I think there was a Mishkan Moshe synagogue was established in a neighborhood called Gilo in Jerusalem. And remember, we spoke about Rav Hezkiah Zerubbabeli who was also a principal in Torah for many, many years in Iran. My great uncle, he happens to be a very, very great rabbi. He himself, Rav Cheskia, I believe, passed away in 2008, if I'm not mistaken. It was his Hilula, I think, at the beginning of Shvat. I can't remember the exact date. Maybe the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th of Shvat. Rav Heskia, his Kilula was. And actually, just to point out, for example, many of the great Zagari family and Heskia family, many of them are Rosh Kollels now, Rosh Yeshivot, and great Talmidei Chachamim at the moment, especially in Eretz Yisrael. And I recommend everyone to learn more about them. And many of it's a very, very spiritual family, the Zagari family and the Zerubbabel family, in of its own right. And we're going to speak about Rabbi David Zargari and many of the children in the next few minutes also. He would spend, he would establish this synagogue in the Gilo neighborhood. You could see the great grandiose amount of Torah he actually perpetuated in his lifetime, and great religious, cultural, social services he provided. I think Adon Moshe Zagari, or Musa Zagari, you could say, he passed away, I believe, on the 30th of Tishrei, on the 12th of October in the year 2007. Now, he translated and wrote many books, including The Peace of the Soul, I'll say it in English, a book called Lifestyle, a book with regards to the Jewish festival Hanukkah, a book connected to Rabbi Akiva. There was a book concentrating on anger, let's just say, that's what's part of it. A book on Tehillim, he would translate. A book of prayer, a Sidur Tfilah Le Moshe, I believe it was. It was a Bostanai reported over, the Aguela, and several textual informations and articles on religious law, of Jewish law, of halacha, and various different facts. Also, we have to point out now, as we said before, he'd leave great Rabbanim also. And one of the most famous rabbis in Los Angeles, without a doubt, one of the most famous Jewish leaders, rabbis in Persian Jewry worldwide, is Rabbi David Zargari. And he is a great rabbi in Los Angeles, and would found a Torah community over there, a great synagogue, a yeshiva, I think, in the Pico neighborhood in Los Angeles. And very, very much, I think he'd studied in Ner Yisrael, if I'm not mistaken, originally. He left Iran as a young man just after the 1967 Six-Day War. I believe if I'm not mistaken, he might have originally come to study in Hebrew University, and he would continue his studies, I think, in America at a very, very short time in the famous Yeshivat Ner Yisrael under the president of the time, Rabbi Naftali Neuberger, and the Rosh Yeshiva Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg. And he didn't become a businessman, he became a really great rabbi and has influenced many thousands of people worldwide. We have to point out many great rabbanim that actually were nurtured, let's just say, from his greatness of Torah, have actually come from him. And his excellence, brilliance in Torah would lead him now currently to head the Torah Chaim complex, and which I think is a 3-story synagogue, and has educated very, very vastly worldwide. I wanted to just speak about a couple of articles within regards to interviews that were based within regards to him. I think the Jewish Journal and the famous Mishpacha Magazine will actually give a presentation within regards to Rabbi David Zargari's very famous books, and he's achieved 4 decades at least of great, let's say, Torah flourishing in among the Persian Jewish community and the wide community of its own as a whole in Los Angeles in of itself. Like let's just say, with regards to Torah Chaim, he was actually interviewed. I think they were planning to open a first Sephardi high school by 2025. I don't know if that has opened yet or not. In itself, mikvaot they've actually opened, and he was interviewed, and Rabbi Zargari would say how much Hashem has been grateful, let's just say, for all the time he's been over there. And I think he's got one of his offices in the Tashbar, if I'm not mistaken, which was the first Sephardi school he founded, and he speaks about it over there, how I think it was nearly 40 years ago he would actually come to Los Angeles and teach Torah, and huge amounts. As of 2023, let's say this 50,000 Persian Jewish community of Los Angeles would turn, and Rabbi Zargari's influence over there would be absolutely huge. I think he arrived, if I'm not mistaken, in the year 1986 to Los Angeles, and I think originally when he was in Los Angeles, he would learn in the kollel of Rabbi Chaim Fassman, if I'm not mistaken, and would start giving classes immediately in Pico Boulevard at that point in time. And he would actually notice the need for a school over there, and he would have help. I think his of Rabbi David Zargari's wife is Rabbanit Bina, if I'm not mistaken, and I think they have 7 children, if I'm not mistaken, and they would use that area in of itself to become like the home, the abode, for the Persian community. I think in 1987 it was where the year he would start this preschool and calling it Torah Chaim. It was an area called La Kien Nega, and Rabbi Zargari said, I think it was quoted in Jewish Journal, the campus was easy to find across the street from an established synagogue called Temple Bet Am, if I'm not mistaken. I think he would rent originally office and printed flyers saying he was opening a preschool for Persian Jews, and obviously it would take time at the moment, at the beginning, but since 1988 Torah Chaim has grown as Persians were pouring into the community. They, I think, originally bought one building, then another building, and now they have 8th grade boys, 8th grade girls, 2 campuses, early child center, I think almost 300 students. This as of 2023, if I'm not mistaken, and very, very interesting enough. So there's a whole article within regards to I think this Torah Chaim school will actually adopt the name Tashbar, if I'm not mistaken, which obviously means that the Talmud and Zohar say that the world stands on the pure Torah and Tefillah of the Tinok Beit Rabban, let's just say, in of its own right. And obviously this, let's just say, you can see just how great the Torah community came in of itself just from him. He actually talks over that. I think he was 14 years of age, if I'm not mistaken. I think his bar mitzvah was at the time period of the 6-Day War, if I'm not mistaken. And I think when he was 14 years, he would actually go, 14 years of age, he went to Israel, if I'm not mistaken. And he was actually sent to Israel in of itself. And family in of itself, we've spoken about Rabbi Musa Zargari, the great rabbi over there. And he states inside the Jewish Journal that being a religious Jew in Iran was maybe, it was difficulties at that point in time. Obviously, in Iran itself, at that point in time, the Shabbat was seen as a regular day, not by the Jewish community, God forbid, but by the society as a whole. And that's one of the reasons why he would actually go to Eretz Yisrael. And Rabbi Musa Zargari, in his brilliance, would actually send him over there. And he would graduate, I think there was a Hebrew University high school, if I'm not mistaken. And that's when eventually I think he would end up in the famous Ney Yisrael seminary in Baltimore, but we have to point out, and he's left many descendants, many rabbis, if I'm not mistaken, over there. I think Rabbi Aryeh Zargari, who's a son of Rabbi David Zargari, happens to be a rabbi at Tashbar School, if I'm not mistaken. So it's really, really encapsulating the greatness. Anyone tuning in live, we're speaking about Rabbi Musa Zagari, Rabbi Moshe Zagari, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, very great rabbi from Iran of his time, great rabbi in Gila also. And now I wanted to stay over, there's a very famous article with regards to Rabbi David Zargari about his history in the famous Mishpacha Magazine. It was actually a front page feature, I believe, back in the year 2018. I actually had a copy of the magazine also, which I have to point out. Okay, so I wanted to just state over the entire article with your permission, and really gives a good synopsis of Persian Jewish community history. And this is an ultra-Orthodox magazine feature, I have to point out over here. So the article starts, Persian Jews came to Los Angeles as impoverished refugees, yet many of them turned their luck around and remade the fortunes they'd enjoyed in Iran. But what would be with the spiritual riches? So 2 rabbis, Rabbi David Shofet and Rabbi David Zargari, ended up nurturing communities of different styles, but let's say both great Persian rabbis and stuff. Remember, Rabbi David Shofet, if I'm not mistaken, is a descendant of Rabbi Yedidia Shofet, who was a chief rabbi of Iran also. So these 2 great rabbis will really, really form and become great rabbis in Los Angeles. Rabbi David Zargari being the son of Rabbi Musa Zargari, who we were speaking about before. So we're going to read over this entire Mishpacha Magazine article, because it was a front page feature and got huge press in 2018 in itself. So the article starts off, come to Brooklyn, Sephardic neighborhoods, and the majority of the population is Syrian. On King's Highway, grocery stores stock tamarind sauce and pickled vegetables, Syrian cheese and za'atar pita, while the throaty consonants of Arabic mingle with Hebrew and English. But 3,000 miles west in Los Angeles, Persians dominate the Sephardic scene over there. And the article says to take a stroll down to the Pico Robinson neighborhood over there, the Pico Boulevard to be precise. And the customers are speaking Farsi over there. The shelves stock pomegranate syrup, chickpea flour, dill and barberries, cardamom and basmati rice over there. The Persian conquest. And now, anyone that you're tuning in live, we're speaking in this video about Rabbi Musa Zargari, a great rabbi from Iran who established a synagogue. He has a great son, Rabbi David Zargari, who was a great Torah leader in Los Angeles, one of the finest great rabbis in the United States of America, without doubt, currently, we have to point out over there, and a relative of mine, cousin of my dad, I have to point out. Now, I'm reading an article over from the Mishpacha Magazine presentation over here. We're going to take a short break and we're going to come back in 1 minute and continue this video over here. So wait 1-2 minutes. In the meantime, anyone tuning in live, please join our community and subscribe to the channel. And we'll be back in 1 minute, friends. Hi Shalom everyone tuning in live. We're exploring live great rabbi. We happen to be speaking about a special magazine feature with regards to Rabbi David Zargari and Rabbi Shofet also, which was featured in Mishpacha Magazine. I'm just quoting over what it said over in this article over here, this news feature in the ultra-Orthodox edition of the Mishpacha Magazine. Now I'm going to continue the article over here. The Persian conquest of Los Angeles, let's say, began in the late 1970s when Jews ran, obviously, from a terrifying new Islamic regime in Iran. Rabbi David Shofet, who was the son of the former chief rabbi of Tehran and a scion of long line of great rabbanim, and we actually recorded a video with regards to Rabbi Yedidia Shofet, if I'm not mistaken, who was the chief rabbi over there. I recommend everyone to watch over that video. They would flee to Los Angeles, and I think that was in the year 1980. They would find many of the compatriots frequenting, unfortunately at that point in time, even going to reform synagogues, some of the people from the community were, and he would set about to, at that window of time, organizing a minyan, and would slowly rebuild the community, and which they had known back from home in Iran originally. The community, the Kihila, would grow and prosper. They bought a building in upscale Beverly Hills and started a preschool and a weekly Beit Midrash. So over here, I'm also speaking, I have to note about Rabbi Shofet also, who made. So this article on Mishpacha Magazine is not just speaking about Rabbi David Zargari, they're also speaking about Rabbi Shofet, who was also from a great rabbinic family over there. So Rabbi Shofet would continue to lead the famous Nessa Israel congregation at that point in time, which stands, let's say, the article states over here, poised between the old world of traditional but westernized Iran and the myriad options of America. this report over. Now, Rabbi David Zargari will come to Los Angeles, as we stated before. I think it was this article was written in 2018. And they say 30 years ago, so that would have been in the year 1987, 1988, and will found a Torah community based in, let's say, a more yeshivish orientated neighborhood of Hiko neighborhood. Obviously, he was the son of Rabbi Musa Zargari. He is the son of Rabbi Musa Zargari. He would, who we just mentioned about at the beginning of the video, he would start off like various different, he would, obviously we know that he went to Ner Yisrael Synagogue, Ner Yisrael Yeshiva, the famous yeshiva in America, Baltimore, very great ones. We spoke about how he would leave Iran just after the 6-Day War, would originally study in Hebrew University, and continue studies in Baltimore and Ner Yisrael. And now the article here says he ended up under the wing of legendary Persian activist family and the Ner Yisrael president, Rabbi Naftali Neuberger, and Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg. And instead of becoming a businessman, as we said before, he became a great Talmid Chacham. He would use his administrative skills, he would lead the kehila and the school, and today the Torah Chaim complex occupies 3 stories on South Robertson Boulevard. And these are 2 rabbis, Rabbi Shofet and Rabbi Zargari, who this article is speaking about, are coming from various different diverse neighborhoods, different neighborhoods of itself, and they are all seen as one community in its own right. Okay, now let's go now speak about Rav Shofet for a minute, because this is what the magazine, Mishpacha Magazine, is speaking about. Okay, Nesa Yisrael, let's say, has more expensive, let's say, white buildings, Grecian columns, manicured flower beds, has a stately grace of southern plantation. At one end, preschool children play in a yard. The offices are at the other end, almost a city's block's walk. And the author over here of the Mishpacha Magazine is stating, I take a peek inside the synagogue, an enormous, majestic room with velvet theatre-style seats surrounding a raised bima, enclosed by mahogany railings and polished brass. The rabbi's office, referring to Rabbi Shofet, is spacious but spare. A photo of Rabbi Shofet's father, I think it was the chief rabbi of Iran, or at one stage in time of Tehran, will hang on the wall, along with other pictures of great rabbis' artwork. Rabbi Shofet, as they say, is a distinguished looking and a serious person, and very, very interesting at the time when Mishpacha Magazine is interviewing him, and receives courteously author of this article, and is very warm when it comes to subject, and speaks about history, the strengths of his community itself, respectively. His father, we have to point out, Rabbi Yedidia Shofet, was originally from the city of Kashan in Esfahan, if I'm not mistaken, which was a center, we have to point out, of trade, precious skills in rugs, tapestries, and he states over in the article itself that the Jews didn't make the fabrics themselves. There were merchants and connoisseurs who created the market. And Rabbi Shofet actually relates in the article, according to a family tradition, the Shofets came to Persia from Spain originally and have been rabbis and dayanim for 13 generations. He states, my father knew the names of all his predecessors, and he wrote 2 books of memoirs in Farsi, and his father was close actually to the famous Ben Ish Chai. We're talking about Rabbi Shofet at the moment, who was featured in this article, famous article in Mishpacha Magazine. Jewish history, just to give an Iranian history over here, in Iran dates back to the biblical times, when some of the exiled tribes would settle in Syria and northern Iran, and after the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, the temple, the remaining Jews were exiled to Babylon, which was soon taken over by the Persian Empire. But since the end of that short-lived empire, the region had seen the dynasty after another rise and fall at that point in time. From the time of the Islamic conquest, we're exploring the Persian history, the article is saying, of Persia at the end of the 17th century. Islam had been the region's official religion. For centuries, most of the population was Sunni, but the, let's say, bloody Shiite conquest in the 15th century meant many Jews were either forced to convert or live like Anusim at that point in time. There's a doctor named Dr. Amnon Netzer, who's, Alav Shalom, a friend of Rabbi Shofet, who was speaking about in this article, who taught, I think, at Hebrew University, went to villages, if I'm not mistaken, in the Isfahan province and found many graves of Jews who had been forced to convert. And it states over in the article, we only survive because of the closeness and strength of our families. Rabbi Shofet actually adds, when the Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, came to power in the 20th century, he sought to modernize the country, improving life for the Jewish people. They came out of the ghetto. They could study in universities. They say they became industrialists. Rabbi Shofet said the Jewish people took advantage of new opportunities more than anyone. But as in Europe, leaving, let's say, this ghetto would actually pose now all of a sudden spiritual dangers. Many children would study in Alliance Israeli schools. We've spoken about that. That was like a French school, and many of the Rabbanim were not so for these schools, and hence they would open Torah later on in Iran in 1946 to give a more spiritual and Torah-based education in itself. So many of them would go there, and they would become, let's just say, because the Alliance schools are secularized, and young people went abroad, often to the United States, training as professionals, returning to Iran, let's say more westernized at that point in time. And in Tehran there was maybe about, out of the 80,000 people there weren't that many Shomer Shabbat families, like properly Shomer Shabbat. He states in the article over there, he estimates, we have to point out, maybe because of these reasons. But Jewish people in smaller cities would remain more religious. We're talking about of which maybe in places like Kerman and so on and so forth. Maybe Shiraz. They didn't have yeshiva like in Europe. Rabbi Shofet will state in this Mishpacha article, the small cities had Batei Midrashim, with rabbis teaching them. Our yeshiva trained people to be teachers of Torah, and salaries were low, obviously, so many people would have to leave at that point in time. When the State of Israel was established in 1948, we were reading over, friends, anyone tuning in live, who started off the video speaking about Rabbi Musa Zargari, a very great rabbi from Iran, and become a great rabbi in Israel, also a family connection to me. And now we're speaking about an article based on Rabbi David Zargari, Rabbi Musa Zargari's son, which was featured in the famous Mishpacha Magazine. It was a front page feature in 2018, and it's incorporated in this article is a history with regards to Iranian Jewry, and speaking also about Rabbi Shofet, also who's a Persian leader also in Los Angeles. Now the article continues, when the State of Israel was established, Iran actually recognized its statehood and quietly cooperated with Israel on joint military and agricultural projects. Hence the Jewish people weren't forced to flee as they were in neighboring Iraq, although many did avail themselves of the opportunity to settle in the Holy Land. At the time, I think Iranians in general were happy to stay in the place. I think in the 1960s, only about 50 Iranian families were living in Los Angeles. Someone named Jimmy Delshad, a Persian Jew, who I think in the year 2007 became the first Iranian American mayor of Beverly Hills, would actually quote over telling the W magazine that he knew barely a dozen families when he arrived from Shiraz in 1959. The Iranian exodus didn't happen until the rise of radical Islam in 1970s. I think it was when the Shah escaped in early 1979. Many Jews didn't take it seriously. He would flee the country before, but then the Islamists took over for real. And when they, let's say, executed Jewish community head and billionaire Habib El-Ghanian, let's say there was a sham trial, many took it as a signal to flee. Mr. El-Ghanian did so many good things for the people, the Jews and the non-Jews in Iran. Rabbi Shofet says, with a sad shake to the Mishpacha author over here, to the person, he used to build a home for each of his workers. He was generous to everyone, but they accused him of being a Zionist and they shot him. The attitude of the non-Jews changed overnight. Jewish people are now officially untouchable, meaning I think Muslims believe they contaminated whatever they touched. Before the revolution, Rabbi Shofet would relate on that day, he would go to the market and choose his own fruits and vegetables. Now when he reached to feel a fruit, he felt the hand of the vendor close over his own. Don't touch it, Jewish person. The seller would snarl over that at that stage in time. The Jewish people would begin to flee in droves in Los Angeles and other cities, and they were aided by the American Jewish Federation and other agencies. I think reported over in New York, Chabad brought over 5,000 children through a series of connections. Ner Yisrael's Rabbi Neuberger was involved in a network that helped tens of thousands of Jews escape from Iran, and in Baltimore the yeshiva accepted many dozens of young men over there. It's actually reported over, I think in Yeshiva Ner Yisrael they used to teach in Yiddish, but because of the influx of Persian Jews over there, they would actually switch the language to English, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just say, we're continuing. Anyone tuning in live, we are quoting over a famous Mishpacha article feature in the year 2018, which is a front page feature speaking about Rabbi David Zargari and Rabbi Shofet. They both head great Jewish communities, and Rabbi David Zargari is the son of Rabbi Musa Zargari, Rabbi Musa Zagari, a very famous rabbi of his time. Now, spreading the wealth is a new subject in this article. In now impoverished refugees, they had to learn a new language, learn to function in a new system, and they couldn't retrieve their fortunes. Many of them used to live in the equivalent of Beverly Hills in Tehran, but lost it. Rabbi Shofet says, but they had business experience and education, and they succeeded over there. Downtown Los Angeles used to be a midbar, like a wilderness. The Iranian Jews would open shops, they would sell fabrics. The Iranian Jews they transformed the landscape. Some invested in small industries or real estate and did very well. Not everyone who'd been rich in Iran prospered in Los Angeles, but others who were, let's say, nobodies at that point in time in Iran came here and made fortunes. And it wasn't long before his community of Beverly Hills acquired a reputation for being very wealthy and not shy about flaunting their success with, say, extravagant homes and cars. And he actually quotes in the article here, local folklore has it that when Bill Clinton, who was president of America, visited the Palatiel Hilltop, home of Sam Nazarian, who was a hotel and restaurant magnate involved in politics, he remarked, "This makes me realize I really do live in government housing." Rabbi Shofet himself fled Iran in 1980, and the regime was looking for me, they say. He says, I'd studied in Eretz Yisrael, I was active in the community, and was a member of a Jewish committee. That was enough for them. He had to leave his children and wife behind, although they were able to join him a year later. I was on the last plane out before the Iran-Iraq war, he says, Rav Shofet. If I hadn't been on it, I would have been stuck over there. It's quoted in Mishpacha Magazine. So actually we're learning the science of what went on in Iran at that point in time. His younger sister had married some years, let's say, earlier and moved to Los Angeles, so he joined her there. Through the grapevine, he'd gotten wind of the sorry spiritual, let's say, the Persian Jews in Los Angeles, the city's earlier migrants, I should say, traditional, but not learned it. Unfortunately, were invited by Reform Jews to join the Sinai Temple. Obviously, that's not an Orthodox community, and they bring their own Persian Sidurim at that point in time and tell their friends at home about this new brand of Judaism, obviously, which we don't agree with. We're an Orthodox channel here, and so we never had this way in Iran. Rabbi Shofet said Judaism was one way, it was an Orthodox way. We go to synagogue on Shabbat, that was important to everyone. So in Iran, it was all Orthodox, there was no reform over there, so that was a danger. So that's why it was so crucial that Rabbi Zargari and Rabbi Shofet will open up communities there at the time. When he arrived, he was determined to do something. He approached someone named Rabbi Morris Lamb, the rabbi of the Bet Jacob of Beverly Hills, and asked him for a place where Persians could pray. According to their own minhag, Rabbi Lamb agreed to give them a space. The first Shabbat, I think, they had 9 Persians, and there was one Ashkenazi person that reported over. But people heard and began coming. My father arrived from Iran, and soon there were 400 people, and had moved to a theater over there. This is what the article continues. The synagogue moved to several locations, the Valley, Santa Monica, before the current building was brought. Originally, apparently, it was a church. It was in terrible disrepair, but soon renovated into a Persian synagogue and community center. As the community evolved, more yeshivish style Persian schools would begin to flourish in Los Angeles. The younger generation became more religious, and that sometimes created, let's say, maybe at that point in time with Persian politics, maybe tensions in the family. The kids would tell their parents, "Mom, Dad, you have to go to do tevilat kelim with the mikveh, with the dishes, before you use them." And so you could see the family itself was sprouting and becoming more religious. Rav Shofet would say, would continue talking about this in the article. And, they would actually remind the children of these parents, how about the great-grandparents and their grandparents, how religious they were in Iran previously, before the days of, let's say, where it became more secularized at that point in time. And so the article continues saying that yet the more secular Persians sometimes became assimilated to lengths unheard of in Iran. Unfortunately, there were pockets of people that would marry non-Jews, absorbing non-Jewish priorities at that point in time among the people that would actually escape to Iran. The children were sent to American universities, which have an impact, and it's not so easy to marry our children within the community. Expectations are very high. The girls become professionals and want a man who can give them a great life. In the end, too many are staying single. This is what the article says over into their 30s and 40s. Anyone tuning in live, we're sort of diverged away from the topic of Drabonim with Rabbi Musa Zargari. We're talking a bit more about the Persian community, of how they came to Los Angeles at that point in time, because Rabbi David Zargari was a main feature of this article where he was speaking, and the ultra-Orthodox community was very much praising Rabbi David Zargari, the son of Rabbi Musa Zagari, and Rabbi Shofet, the son of the chief rabbi of Iran. And the girls became professionals. At that point in time, he sighs with weariness of a teacher frustrated with much love, but sometimes there were students. I think it's easier for the more yeshivish people. The article says over there, those yeshivish people would, be able to marry the younger children, and expectations aren't so high from a materialistic point of view over there. Nessa Israel, which is a synagogue under Rabbi Shofet, obviously has a beautiful simcha hall, and it's booked by many, many Persians. Even Ashkenazim will book and do events over there also. And very interesting. In a typical Shabbat, I think this was, written in 2018, Rabbi Shofet actually talks about that there's crowd numbering up to 1,000 people, and many of them middle-aged, let's just say, in of itself. He gives a drasha, a Torah in the Farsi, in the Persian language, and his son speaks in English for the younger members, Rabbi Shofet's one. And Rabbi Shofet acknowledges that over 2 millennia of Persian culture that was the backdrop of the community is slowly disappearing. This was in 2018. While the young people still enjoy the ethnic cuisine, and many listen to, let's say, Iranian music still, obviously, they no longer appreciate, let's say, nuanced aspects of Persian culture. And so Rabbi Shofet's son, while able to tell a good story in Farsi, finds it challenging to give over more complex ideas in that language. I think the 20,000 Jews left in Iran are raising a new generation in that culture. That's as of 2018, it's reported over. Today there are 2,000 children in Jewish schools and a kollel of 30 men. This is as of 2018 in this article where they get smicha. Now let's speak about Rabbi David Zargari. He's a feature in this article also. And now the article will turn to him. The Torah Chaim Shul of synagogue of Rabbi David Zargari looks like a kollel in of its own right, and of Nessa Israel. It's painted. It's got a painted stucco structure to it on a leafy block, and on South Robertson, it's attractive, and synagogue in its own right. Rabbi Zargari's office is very modest in of itself. And the article will talk about Rabbi Zargari now, and remember, Rabbi Zargari is the son of Rabbi Musa Zargari over here, who we're speaking about at the start of the video. Tall and energetic. Rabbi Zargari he's a very, very positive person in of its own right. The article was written in 2018, so at that stage in time it was 30 years. He was a rabbi of Torah Chaim and the director of the Yeshiva, the Tashba Torah Chaim over there. And everyone was not surprised by how great he actually became. He arrived in the United States, as I talked about before. I think originally he came in on his way to get an MBA, but obviously university degree, but at the end we see what a great rabbi he became. And obviously would study in his father, who we spoke about at the beginning, Rabbi Musa Zagari, Moshe Zagari, who was a famous educator in Iran, a great Kiruv worker in Iran, and he actually wanted Rabbi Zagari to go to Eretz Israel, and I think, yes, he wanted to go to Eretz Israel, but Rabbi Levin persuaded him to stay on and teach. He says, referring to Rabbi Yitzchak Meir Levin, the son-in-law of the Imre Emet of Gor, who had been sent by Rabbi Aaron Kotler to Iran to help send kosher food to Russia through the Ba'ad Hatzalah, if I'm not mistaken. He saw there wasn't much Torah in Iran, and when he found himself with so many money left over, he asked Rav Kotler if he could start a school. And Rabbi Zargari relates, someone named Isaac Shalom, who we've spoken about in the series, will contribute money, and the school was named Beit Shalom in his honor. Now, there's someone named Rabbi Tzvi Kitov, who was a son of an educator, an author, Rabbi Eliyahu Kitov, the author of the Sefer HaTorah, the book of our heritage. The Jew and his home and many other works was sent to Iran as a shliach and a teacher. When Rabbi Zargari was a youngster, he taught Talmud, Gemara to the boys, and right after the 6-Day War would propose to Rabbi David Zargari, who was recently bar mitzvah, to actually go back to Israel. And Rabbi Kitov himself would take him in as a ben bayit over there. My father wanted his children to go to college, Rabbi Zargari said, so I left my bagrut in Israel and went to Hebrew University. Remember, Hebrew University will provide also opportunities also in Torah also, and to continue great Jewish lifestyle at that point in time, and it would be more of a safe, better Jewish atmosphere than in Iran of those days. His father, Rabbi Musa Zargari, loved Eretz Yisrael, it's quoting in that article, and made it, he was a huge supporter of moving to Eretz Israel, and I think the Jewish Agency would actually be very much operating in Iran, and that's what's stated over. Rabbi Zargari says they were, very, very interesting. When young David Zargari at that point in time was in Israel, Rabbi Naftali Neuberger visited Tehran, and the Shah, hoping to suppress extreme religious elements, was planning to abolish private religious education, including Jewish education. So Rabbi Neuberger went with a group of senators to advocate for Jewish children, Jewish education, and then decided to bring back a group of students to Ner Yisrael, and was assumed they trained as rabbis and mechanechim and returned to Iran. Rabbi Zargari came to New York in 1975. This is the son of Rabbi Musa Zargari, Rabbi David Zargari we're speaking about, with plans to originally attend university in Toronto, but the family he was staying with urged him, why Toronto? Go to Baltimore instead. And it was in January where he missed the beginning of the winter semester, so he would check it out, and there he stayed with the Persian boys Rabbi Neuberger had brought. When Rabbi Neuberger brought a second group of boys 2 years later, Rabbi Zargari was able to serve as a big brother to them. Then the revolution erupted, and the yeshiva was flooded with 130 great Iranian boys. People began calling the yeshiva Neuberger's Iran's refugee camp. It was actually nicknamed. And Rabbi Zargari did get his MBA in the end, but it was while earning a smicha, a rabbinic ordination. He was offered a job with a business in Silver Spring, but Rosh Yeshiva Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg had other ideas. He changed my life, Rabbi Zargari says. He told me there are 50,000 Persian Jews in Los Angeles. You have an achrayut to go there. You've got a responsibility. Now, Rabbi Weinberg had heard that many Persian Jews in Los Angeles had fallen prey to various different ideologies that had decimated, let's say, Ashkenazic Americans. They arrived and found, let's say, there was, unfortunately, when they came to America, there was reform, conservative, reconstructive. These were all threats to their pure Orthodox Judaism they practiced in Iran for hundreds and hundreds of years. We have to point about. And the article says it's about who we are. During his visits to New York, Rabbi Zargari would develop a relationship with a great rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Harari Raful. We've spoken about the Harari Raful, let's just say, family in its own right, who became a mentor for him, while the evolution of Brooklyn's Syrian community served as something as model. Both the Syrians and Persians were immigrant communities from the Middle East, some of whose members became very, very wealthy at that point in time. Both had retained a strong sense of Jewish tradition, family and community, and in both communities certain religious practices had fallen out of use. There weren't that many yeshivot, as we spoke about. This was the magazine saying there weren't many kollels of like European lifestyle, and hence when the newly strengthened, they tried to encourage strict observance, there was pushbacks, let's just say, at that point in time. And Rabbi Zargari himself says that he faced some antagonism, and he admits this cheerfully. People said I was pushing Ashkenazic propaganda. This is what he says over in the article over there. They said the people from, let's say Satmar, Aguda were, let's say, trying to change our children in Vienna. Remember, many Persians would actually go to Vienna on their way to Los Angeles at that point in time. Actually, interesting enough, I actually met a rabbi only 2-3 days ago that would actually work, yesterday I was in a yeshiva Modi'in, and the rabbi over there was working in Vienna at that point in time and helping Persian Jews at that window in time, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something very much I have to point out over there. So speaking of that, and the article continues, and he answered, let's say, the challenges by telling them this isn't about trying to be like Ashkenazim. This is the old generation. The grandparents were more at home in his synagogue than the parents because they remembered a more religious generation. Now, it's actually interesting. They say Rabbi Zargari would draw great inspiration. We're talking about Rabbi David Zargari, the son of Rabbi Musa Zagari. He would gain great inspiration from Rav Raful, who we spoke about before, and Rabbi Muri Maslaton, who was another close connection. Now, Chacham Raful, he was very, very great. I think he had if I'm not mistaken, he was connected to a flagship Syrian synagogue in the community center, if I'm not mistaken. His first major move was the establishment of the Torah Chaim, which we spoke about before, a Hebrew academy which would open its doors in 1987, and they had a goal, let's just say, so people could come out registering their kids, bring also the people out of other communities, let's just say, of its own right. And then And now it's currently, the article says, it's renamed Tashba. As of 2018, it educates 260 children from Shomer Shabbat families, reported over, and it's the only Sephardic elementary school yeshiva outside the East Coast. That's as of 2018. Things might have changed since then. About 35% of the students are... About 35% of the students are from non-Persian Sephardic backgrounds, and there are some Ashkenazim also learning there, reported over. For high school boys, the boys attend various yeshivot such as Chafetz Chaim, Metivta, which now has a majority of Persian Talmudim, and the girls attend the Beit Yaakov also. At the beginning, I think Rabbi Zargari found himself giving religious instruction not only to students but to the parents as well. They had to be approached, emphasizing, let's just say, the beauty of coming close to Jewish Torah observant Judaism, creating a relationship with Hashem. And he would find himself very interesting. He would find himself where a child would start objecting to riding. Let's say some of the families would not be Shomer Shabbat, so they will, would start. He would, there'll be issues with regards to that. So now the children are becoming Shomer Shabbat again, so they wouldn't want to agree maybe with more liberal lifestyles of the family in of itself. So that's something. And he, obviously, Rabbi Raful is a great Syrian rabbi. So with the Syrians, article says, you can take a direct approach. He comments, I was once at a Shabbaton in Great Neck, where a Sephardic rabbi addressed the crowd with a very stern, fire and brimstone approach. But that doesn't work with the Persians. They come from a culture that values good manners. They come from a culture that values educated, sophisticated people who require more subtle method. They don't like a confrontational, aggressive approach, he says. You have to lift them up and not talk down to them. That's what Rabbi Zargari says in his greatness, in knowing the people's person. 10 years after opening the yeshiva and the synagogue, Rabbi Zargari opened the kollel, and that was the idea of Rabbi Neuberger and the Rosh Yeshiva, he admits, and it has obviously reinforced the community in the ways of kollels did, and the community grew. And there was even issues like, say, for example, the famous Shidduch crisis we have to point out, and there was many educated boys. There was a lack of fewer girls. The article points out, and very, very interesting enough. His graduates go on to study in yeshiva in Lakewood, in Eretz Yisrael, different branches of Chafetz Chaim, and Rabbi Zargari acknowledges in this article the thanks he's got for Nei Yisrael Yeshiva in of its own right. And the article quotes saying that Rabbi Zargari's own teaching has spread it all the way back to Iran. His shiurim there's many hundred shiurim featured on YouTube. Persian Jewish Masorah extends not just in Baltimore, also Atlanta to New York, Los Angeles, even Eretz Yisrael and Iran. In Los Angeles, the community itself, as of 2018, had 25 Orthodox synagogues distributed between Beverly Hills, Pico, and the Valley. And very interesting enough, I think there was a national conference of Persian Jewish rabbinic leaders was held in Los Angeles as of, I think, just before 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And the new generation may speak English nowadays or Hebrew instead of Farsi, but Rabbi Zargari says the culture may have become diluted in America. The Ikara, the main thing is their Torah heritage has survived and even thrived. Now, another great rabbi from one of the sons of Rabbi Musa Zargari is Rabbi Shlomo Zagari. There's many great descendants we have to point out over here. Rabbi Shlomo Zagari, I think, actually attended the Mechina also before going to Nei Yisrael in the Rabbinical College in Baltimore. He received a master in Talmud law. He's a rabbi and would study in postgraduate programs in America and Israel, and offers many classes on a range of topics at Yachad, which is located in downtown Los Angeles. Remember, he's also a son of Rabbi Musa Zagari, and provides a community youth very much with great guidance in of itself, and is a great rabbi in of itself, and has really rejuvenated. And I think he's also a chazan at the Yachad Kollel, if I'm not mistaken. So he's another great rabbi in Iran. And there's other great descendants. Rabbi Musa Zagari also has many family members connected, great rabbis, educators in of its own right, and very, very interesting. Now, friends, we started speaking about Rabbi Musa Zargari today. I think his Hilula is on the 30th of Tishrei, and he is a relative, a great relative, a great rabbi from Iran. We've been recording videos, biographies of other rabbis from various places from all over the world here inside this series, and hopefully I want to speak about more family members also in due course. Bezrat Hashem over here. So please, if anyone is a family member related to me, I'd love to speak to you and be in contact. Friends, we are a community here. We are learning about great rabbis of yesteryear from all over the world, If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please subscribe. And many of the, Rabbi Musa Zargari's descendants have become great rabbis. They're also rabbis, I have to point out, in Israel, many of the descendants. I think there's kollels, Rosh kollels are from the Zargari family in Israel. They're prominent educators in Israel, synagogue rabbis. They're teaching in various yeshivot. It's a great family that's been left over from Zargari family from all over these different parts in the world, and have made a huge impact all over the world, especially in Israel and in Los Angeles and in various places also. So I know for a fact that there's kollels, I think, in Gilo that are run by the Zargaris and the Zerubbabellis. Also, many of my relatives, I've got a cousin that's Rosh Kollel, for example. We are also related to Rabbi Zerubbabelli, a relative of Rabbi Zargari. And many of the Zerubbabellis are also Roshi kollels, or got prominent roles also in kollels all over Israel and all over the world, and really spreading the wings of Torah. So we spoke about Rabbi Musa Zargari, Rabbi Moshe Zargari, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. And please don't forget to subscribe and join the channel also. And I appreciate everything. And Bez Hashem, wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom, Mubarak to everyone over here that's watching live to the video. And please let me know where you guys are from, where you're watching from. And we are actually concentrating a lot on the famous Persian Rabbanim of yesteryear over here. So from the previous time periods in of itself. So please, everyone join. And wishing you Shabbat Shalom. We're going this week into Parshat. We are entering to Parshat Mishpatim this Shabbat over here, friends. So that's very, very interesting. So wishing you all well, and take care. Okay, sorry. I'm just ending this video. Okay, wishing you all a great day, friends, and take care, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'm just recording this here from the city of Bet Shemesh. If you go to the Stories of Tzaddikim section over here on the channel, you see the other biographies of other great rabbis of yesteryear we have to point out. So thank you, everyone, for watching, and take care.